Hello guys, welcome back. Today we'll take a look at a very exciting topic, which is how to use MongoDB in your Spring Boot application. Ooh, so excited, right? If you haven't installed MongoDB on your machine, you can follow the link on the screen. That page shows you every single step that you need in order to install MongoDB on your laptop. So without further ado, let's jump right in, shall we? So here, I have already opened a project in my IntelliJ IDE. Before we start, let's take a look at the POM.xml to see what dependencies that we need in order to have MongoDB working with Spring Boot application. As can be seen here, compared to the normal dependencies that we have, this time we have a new additional dependency, which is the Spring Boot Starter Data MongoDB. So this has everything that we need in order to interact with a MongoDB database. The first thing I want to do is to set up the connection to our locally running MongoDB. In order to do that, now we have to go to this application.properties file. In here, we have to specify some MongoDB properties. So the property I need to use now is the mongodb.database property. By using this, we can specify what database we want to connect ourselves to. So I will just call it store. And because my locally running MongoDB doesn't have any authentication mechanism, so I don't have to specify username or password. But if you do need to specify, there are some other interesting properties you may want to take a look. For example, the username property, which will allow you to specify a username. And then there's also the password property for you to specify the password for the user you want to authenticate as. And if your MongoDB runs on a separate server, then you probably also need to specify host. And if it runs on the non-default port, then you have to specify the port as well. So in my case, it's running on local, so I don't have to use the host or the port property, and it's not password protected, so I don't have to use these two properties as well. And after this, the next thing I want to do is I want to create a Java class that represents a document saved in a database. So what is document? Well, you can think of document as a row in a table from the relational database. So this class, I will call it product. And I will need to annotate this class with the annotation document. And what does a product have? Well, a product probably has an ID field which uniquely identifies this product in the product catalog. So I will write private string ID. Then it probably also has a product name. Then it may also have model number, and it probably also has the brand, and it also has the URL. So this captures the URL that will take us to the product information page. And beside this, we also have the image URL. And if in any case in the database the field is called differently than what you have in the Java class, you can always use that annotation called field to specify what is the name of this attribute in the database. So in our case, I can just call it the image URL. And beside this, it also has a price field that indicates how much we're selling this product for. Now let's create some getters and setters for all these fields. And this completes our setup for the document class. Then let's move on to create a controller, which is what we use in order to save data to the database and read the data back. The data in our context is a product. So this is product controller, and I need to annotate this class with REST controller annotation. And what methods do we want to have? Well, first of all, we probably want to have an endpoint that allows us to create a bunch of products in one go. So I will write post mapping / products public list product add product. Then the request body basically contains all the products we want to add into our database. So final list product products. And then besides this, what other endpoint we also need? Well, we also need an endpoint that allows us to get back all the products that are in our database. So the URL mapping is again products, but now the HTTP method mapping is get mapping. Then public list product get products, or I'll call it find products. By the way, when we create the products, we don't need to return anything, so I can change this to void. Next, we want to have an endpoint that will allow us to find just one product at a time. So I will write /products / product ID, public product find product. Now we need to write the class that will give us the ability to talk to the database in order to create product and find product. So let's do that. I will name the class as product repository. This class needs to implement the Mongo repository interface. And this is an interface as well, not a class. In a diamond operator, we first need to specify the document that we want this Mongo repository to manage for us, which is product. And the second argument, we have to specify the type of the unique identifier. And if we go back to product, the type is string. So let's come back to product repository and write a string over here. Now let's inject this dependency or this product repository into our product controller in order to use its methods. Here I will write AutoWire private product repository. And here we can invoke one method on this product repository, which is product repository dot save all. Then give it all the products we want to save. Then here we will do return product repository dot find all. And in the last endpoint, we will use another method, which is product repository dot find by ID. And we have to capture the product ID from the URL path. So pass variable final string product ID. And let's pass that to this method, product ID. And because this is an optional, so we have to map it. So let's do or else get product method reference to its constructor. Now let's try to run this application to see whether it works as expected. So let's first try to add some products. And we have to specify the content type is application JSON. And then we need to give it the request body. So let's copy it from here. So we have 4 products to create. So let's hit play button to see whether we can create them in our database. Okay, so the response code is 200. That means it was successful. So let's try to query these products by using this other endpoint. Let's hit play button. And indeed, we saved those products into the database, and now we're able to retrieve them back. So if I take a look at the Mongo Compass, which is the UI tool to manage our MongoDB, I should see those 4 products in here as well. So let's refresh. And as it can be seen, we have 4 products. Great. Now let's try the last endpoint, which is to find only one product back for us. And let's try to find this product. Copy the ID and paste it here. Hit the play button. And now we only get that one product back, which is exactly what we need. So that's how you use product repository, or in other words, Mongo repository. Very easy, right? You don't have to write any method. And next, I want to show you another way to interact with your MongoDB, which is through MongoTemplate. So let's create another class. This time I will call it product DAO. And I will annotate the class with repository annotation. Here, I will auto-wire the MongoTemplate. And if you notice that we didn't create this MongoTemplate ourselves, right? But why can we auto-wire this into this class? Well, because we're using Spring Boot, and Spring Boot has auto configuration feature for us. So this bin is actually initialized in another class, which is called Mongo Database Factory Dependent Configuration. So as can be seen, here it creates this bin for us. That's why we can auto-wire that into our product DAO. So let's again create 3 methods, and we will use them in the product controller instead of product repository. So the first method we want to create is the method to find all products for us. Public list product find all. Return MongoTemplate dot find all product class. And the next method we want to create is the method that will allow us to save a bunch of products into our database in one go. Public void save all. MongoTemplate dot insert all. We have to pass the products to be saved to the method products. And the last method we need to create is the method that will allow us to find just one product back. Public product find by ID. Final string product ID. Return MongoTemplate.findById product ID, then product.class. So now let's inject this product DAO inside our product controller to see whether we can use this to completely replace the usage of product repository. So here, make a new line, then auto-where private product DAO, and replace this with product DAO, this with product DAO, and then also this with product DAO. And let's remove this. Then let's build our application again so that the changes can be deployed to the embedded Tomcat server. Now let's go to our HTTP client and try to call these 3 endpoints again. But before we do that, let's drop the database so that we can start everything fresh. Hit the trash button to drop this database. Now let's hit this endpoint. As can be seen, it's 200. It means it went through. Now let's try to get back all the products. And as can be seen, we get all 4 products back. And let's try to just get this one single product, shall we? So let's replace that product ID with this new product ID. And we'll hit the play button. And now we only get 1 product back. Awesome. So this is the second way how you can use Mongo templates to interact with your Mongo database. And at this point, you may wonder, okay, since both ways you can do the same thing, how would you choose when to use MongoRepository and when to use Mongo template? Well, it turns out the answer is quite simple. So whenever you want to have more fine-grained control over how you would like to access your data in the Mongo database, you would like to use Mongo template. But if you don't have that requirement, feel free to use MongoRepository, because by using that, you don't have to write pretty much any boilerplate code at all. It automatically generates the method for you to use. But that gives us a question, right? So if, let's say, your requirement is indeed to have better control over how you access the data, does that mean you have to write all the boilerplate code that we wrote here? Can't you just take advantage of a MongoRepository so that you don't have to write any code, but still you get these 3 methods for you to use? Well, it turns out you can do it. You can combine the 2 together. How? Let me show you. So let's create another interface. This time I will call it custom product repository. And one method that we can write here is, let's say we want to update just 1 or 2 fields of this product, and then we can use the Mongo template to do that. So if we don't use Mongo template, however, if let's say we only want to use product repository, it doesn't give us that flexibility. So in the case of Mongo repository, if you want to update this product, you have to find this product back, then change, for example, just the price field and save everything again. That's quite tedious. But with Mongo template, we can do partial update. Let me show you how can we achieve that. So let's define a single method called partial update. Here we'll give it field name, then field value. And our product repository needs to extend from this custom product repository. And we also have to create an implementation for this new interface. Let's call it the custom product repository IMPL. Take a note at this. So the method name has to end with IMPL, otherwise it won't work. But if you prefer a different suffix, of course you can do that, but you need to have some configuration. So the configuration is you have to go to your configuration class and annotate the class with enable Mongo repository. And here you have to specify a different repository implementation postfix, for example, service IMPL. In our tutorial, I don't have this requirement. I'm happy with my class name ends with IMPL, so I will just skip this part. Now, in this implementation, we have to implement the interface that we created. And we have to override or implement that method. And here, we can write auto-wired private MongoTemplate. And here we can do MongoTemplate dot find and modify. Oh, I forgot one thing. We also have to pass in the product ID so that we can find this product in our database. So let's modify that. Let's go to the interface first, add in another parameter, final string product ID. Then let's go back to implementation, modify this as well, and we will write basic query dot query criteria dot where ID is product ID. Then basic update dot update field name field value find and modify options dot none product dot class. Great, so this finishes our setup for this custom implementation for our product repository. So now let's go back to the product controller. Let's create another endpoint. This time we will use the endpoint to partial update a product. So I will write patch mapping /products /product ID public void partial update product path variable final string product ID request body final product. And let's write some code inside this endpoint. Because we don't know which field got updated, so we have to check for that dynamically. So how can we do that? Well, we can do something like for final field product.class.getDeclared fields final string field name field.getName. Because ID field cannot be updated, so we will continue the loop whenever we encounter this field. So if field name equals ID, then let's continue to the next loop. Else, let's find the getter and use that to get the latest value out. Final method getter product.class get declared method get concatenate this with the field name string utils.capitalize field name, and we have to throw exceptions in the method signature. Throw exception. Then let's get the latest value out. Field value invoke product, and if field value is not null, that means we have some latest value that we need to persist into our database to update the old value. So let's write product repository dot partial update. Pass in product ID, then field name, then the latest value of that field. Let's build our project to deploy these changes. Then let's make a call to this endpoint. So let's try to update this one product, content type application JSON. I can just copy this and paste it over here and delete the ones that we don't want to update. So let's try to update model number and price. The model number, I will call it something like HL456332. And the price, let's make it more expensive. Why not, right? So let's make it 153.45 cents. So let's hit this endpoint with this new value for this product. And it succeeded. Great. So let's get back the product. And as it can be seen, the model number is indeed updated and together with price. Right? So this is one usage that you would like to combine both MongoTemplate and the MongoRepository to give you the advantage of using both of them. So let's do a quick sum up. What did we do today? Well, first of all, we saw how we can use MongoRepository to access our data. And the advantage of using that is we don't have to write any boilerplate data access code in order to access data stored in our Mongo database. Next, we explored the option to use MongoTemplate, which gives us the ability to have better control over how we would like to access data in Mongo database. And thirdly, we saw how we can use both MongoRepository and the MongoTemplate so that we don't need to write any boilerplate data access code, but we also have better control over how we'd like to access data in Mongo database. So through today's tutorial, I hope you really learned something new today, and also I hope you find using Spring Boot framework is really fascinating. That's it for this time. See you guys again soon. Bye.